The harsh winds of Krethos carried sand that cut like microscopic blades, stinging Lieutenant Arya Novak's exposed skin as she trudged through the desert wasteland. Her medical pack weighed heavy on her shoulders, heavier still with the knowledge that today's mission would likely add more names to the ever-growing list of casualties. The year 2374 marked the 5th year of the dry season offensive, and the human alliance forces were stretched thin across the barren planet. "Movement, 3 clicks north," came the crackling voice of Marcus Lee through her comms. The lieutenant colonel's tone was clipped, efficient. "Possible Raxar patrol. Hold position." Arya raised her hand, signaling her small medical team to take cover behind a ridge of copper-colored rock. Hana, her assistant nurse, crouched beside her, young eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. The private had only been deployed 2 months ago, fresh from Earth's orbital academy. "Will we engage, ma'am?" Hana whispered, clutching her medical scanner with white knuckles. "We're non-combatants," Arya reminded her, though her hand instinctively checked the pulse pistol at her hip. Being a battlefield nurse didn't exempt her from carrying protection, especially not since the Raxar had begun specifically targeting medical personnel 3 months ago. "Our mission is to reach Outpost Helios and evacuate the wounded." Through her tactical visor, Arya could see the heat signatures of her fellow soldiers spreading out in defensive positions. 23 humans against the brutal efficiency of Raxar warriors. The odds weren't favorable, but they rarely were these days. "Lieutenant Novak," Marcus's voice came through again, tighter this time. "I'm picking up a biological signature that doesn't match our database. I need confirmation." Arya activated her specialized scanner, a piece of equipment that only medical officers with her unique biological training could properly interpret. The device hummed against her palm, projecting data directly to a neural implant. What she saw made her breath catch. "Confirmed, sir. It's a high-ranking Raxar. The biological markers suggest command level." She paused, analyzing further. "Sir, I believe it's Rear Admiral Talcor." A tense silence followed. Talcor was notorious among human alliance forces, the architect behind the massacre at New Vega Colony, responsible for thousands of civilian deaths. His tactical brilliance was matched only by his ruthlessness. If he was here, personally leading a patrol, something significant was happening. "Change of plans," Marcus said finally. "Command wants this target eliminated. Priority Alpha." Arya felt her stomach tighten. As a medical officer, her oath was to preserve life. But military hierarchy meant following orders. She had sworn allegiance to humanity first. Yet something in the biological readings troubled her. "Sir, the Raxar signatures are unusual. I'm detecting severe physiological stress in one of them, possibly wounded." "All the better," came the cold reply. "Prepare to move out. And Novak, keep your team back. This is going to get messy." The ambush happened swiftly, precisely. Human forces struck from 3 directions, utilizing the natural terrain as cover. Pulse rifles and plasma cannons illuminated the desert twilight in violent bursts of blue and orange. The Raxar, caught by surprise, fought back with characteristic ferocity. Their crystalline armor refracted the weapon's fire, casting prismatic death across the battlefield. Arya watched from behind cover, her medical training automatically cataloging injuries as they occurred. 3 humans down already, their life signs flickering on her HUD. She tapped Hana's shoulder. "We move to the wounded. Stay low." They crawled forward, using the confusion of battle as cover. The first injured soldier had taken plasma fire to his left leg, the wound cauterized, but the nerve damage extensive. Arya administered a neural stabilizer while Hana prepped the portable stretcher. "One ready for evac," Arya reported, already moving to the next fallen soldier. That's when she heard it, a sound like cracking glass, followed by a deep, guttural roar that seemed to vibrate through the very ground, through the haze of battle. She saw him, Talcor, massive even for a Raxar, his scaled body towering over 2 meters tall. His crystalline armor was shattered in places, dark ichor seeping through the cracks. Yet still he fought, directing his troops with sharp gestures while firing a devastating energy weapon with his free hand. A human soldier fell before him, then another. But Arya's medical scanners told a different story than the battlefield suggested. Talcor was dying. His biological systems were shutting down, one by one, likely from a wound sustained before their ambush. Still, he fought on, refusing to yield to his body's failure. "Medical team, fall back immediately," Marcus ordered. "We're calling in an orbital strike." Arya froze. An orbital strike would kill everyone, including the human wounded still on the battlefield. "Sir, we still have men out there." "That's an order. Lieutenant, we have a chance to take out Talcor." She looked at the fallen humans, then at the Raxar commander. His orders were sending his troops directly at the medical evacuation points. He was deliberately targeting the wounded and those trying to save them, a war crime by any civilization's standards. Yet her oath rang in her mind: do no harm, preserve life, even enemy life. "Hannah, get the wounded to the extraction point," Arya said suddenly, her decision made. "I'm going to try something." "Ma'am?" Hannah's voice trembled. "If I'm not back in 10 minutes, leave without me." She transferred her command codes to the young private. "That's an order." Before Hannah could protest further, Arya activated her personal camouflage shield, a prototype meant for medical personnel to reach the wounded undetected. It wouldn't hold against direct fire, but in the chaos of battle, it might be enough. She moved across the battlefield like a ghost, staying low, using debris and bodies as additional cover. Her heart hammered against her ribs, each breath measured and controlled. The Raxar's superior senses could detect humans by smell and heat signature if they were paying attention. But they were focused on the main assault, and Talcor was growing weaker by the minute. Arya watched him stagger, catching himself against a rock formation. His troops were too engaged to notice their commander's weakness. This was her chance. She approached from his blind side, medical scanner active. What she saw confirmed her suspicion: internal hemorrhaging, organ failure, and a neural toxin she didn't recognize spreading through his system. Without intervention, he had minutes, perhaps seconds left. "Don't move," she said, suddenly dropping her camouflage and pressing her pulse pistol against what approximated the Raxar's temple. "I'm Lieutenant Arya Novak, Human Alliance Medical Corps." Talcor's reptilian eyes swiveled to her, vertical pupils contracting in the dim light. His mandibles clicked in what she recognized as surprise. Then, aggression. "Human filth," he rasped, his translator converting the complex Raxar language into English. "Come to claim a trophy?" "I'm here to save your life," Arya replied, keeping her voice steady. "You've been poisoned, some kind of neurotoxin I haven't seen before." A sound emanated from him that her translator couldn't process. Perhaps laughter, perhaps pain. "Internal, trail," he managed. "Ceres Vor, ambitious." Arya understood immediately. Talcor hadn't been injured in battle. He'd been assassinated by one of his own. Probably the biological weapons specialist, Major Ceres Vor, whose name had appeared in intelligence briefings. "I can help you," she said, holstering her pistol and reaching for her medical kit. "But you need to order your troops to stop targeting our medical personnel." Talcor's massive clawed hand shot out, grasping her wrist. His strength, even weakened, was overwhelming. "Why? Would you help?" Each word seemed to cost him tremendous effort. Arya met his alien gaze without flinching. "Because I'm a doctor first, a soldier second, and because enough have died today." For a long moment, they remained locked in that position, human and Raxar, healer and destroyer, prey and predator. Then, Slowly, his grip loosened. "Withdraw," he commanded into his communication device. "Tactical. Retreat." Immediately, the Raxar forces began pulling back in disciplined formation, covering their withdrawal with suppressive fire. Arya didn't wait to see if the human forces would pursue. She activated her medical kit, the compact device unfolding into a sophisticated field treatment station. "I need to stabilize you before moving you," she explained, attaching diagnostic sensors to his scaled skin. Her specialized training allowed her to adapt human medical techniques to alien physiologies, a rare skill that had earned her both respect and suspicion among her peers. "The toxin is targeting your neural pathways. I can slow it, but I'll need more equipment for a proper antidote." Talcor watched her work, his breathing labored. "You are foolish. When I recover, I will kill you, and your kind." Arya administered a stabilizing agent, watching as his vital signs marginally improved. "Then I'd better make sure you don't recover too quickly," she replied with grim humor. "Now be quiet and let me work." Her comms crackled to life. "Lieutenant Novak, report your position immediately." Marcus's voice thundered in her ear. "The orbital strike has been authorized." She muted the communication channel. Later, she would face the consequences of her insubordination. For now, she needed to focus on keeping her patient alive. "We need to move," she told Talcor. "Can you walk?" The Raxar commander attempted to rise, then collapsed back against the rock. "No," Arya cursed under her breath. The Raxar weighed at least 3 times what she did. There was no way she could carry him. "Is there a shelter nearby? Somewhere your people might have established?" Talcor's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but self-preservation won out. "Underground. Network. 200 meters. East." Underground networks, of course. The Raxar were known for establishing elaborate tunnel systems beneath the surface of occupied planets. It made strategic sense on a desert world like Krathos. "I'll help you," she said, positioning herself under his arm. Her Exo-Assist medical uniform whirred as it adjusted to support the additional weight. "But you need to help me too." Together, they began an awkward, painful journey across the battlefield. Human and Raxar forces were still exchanging fire, but the fighting had moved further north. Twice they had to take cover as patrols passed nearby. Arya's heart nearly stopped when she recognized Hana's voice coordinating the evacuation of the wounded, following her orders faithfully. The entrance to the tunnel network was hidden beneath an outcropping of rust-colored rock, revealed only when Talcor pressed his palm against a seemingly ordinary stone. A seam appeared, widening into an entrance large enough to admit them both. The air inside was cooler, filtered through some advanced Raxar technology that Arya couldn't identify. The walls pulsed with a bioluminescent glow, illuminating a network of tunnels that stretched in multiple directions. "Which way?" she asked, supporting more of Talcor's weight as his condition deteriorated. "Medical chamber," he managed, gesturing weakly to the right. "Security protocols will kill you. Then you'd better make sure they recognize you as authorized." Arya replied, helping him forward every few meters. Embedded sensors scanned them, crystal lights shifting from red to green as they registered Talcor's biological signature. The medical chamber, when they reached it, was both familiar and alien to Arya's trained eye. Equipment that served similar functions to human medical technology, but designed for Raxar physiology and operated through crystalline interfaces rather than digital ones. She helped Talcor onto what appeared to be an examination platform. It adjusted to his body automatically, securing him in place with field restraints. "I'm going to need to understand how this equipment works," she said, studying the unfamiliar controls. Talcor's breathing had grown more labored. "Central, crystal, your hand." "On it." Arya hesitated. Placing her hand on Raxar technology could very well be a trap. But looking at Talcor's deteriorating condition, she decided it was a risk she had to take. She pressed her palm against the large crystal in the center of the control panel. Immediately, information flooded her mind, not through words or images, but through sensations and concepts. The Raxar medical system was partially telepathic, sharing knowledge directly through neural pathways. Arya gasped as understanding blossomed in her consciousness. How to operate the equipment, what medications would counteract the neurotoxin, the precise calibration needed for Talcor's specific biology. She worked quickly, her hands moving with newfound certainty across the crystal interfaces. The system responded to her intent, dispensing medications and activating treatment protocols. All the while, Talcor watched her through half-lidded eyes, his expression unreadable. "Why do you possess this skill?" he asked as she administered a synthesized antitoxin. "Humans cannot usually interface." "I have enhanced neural plasticity," Arya explained, monitoring his vital signs as they slowly stabilized. "It's why I was selected for xenomedical training. My brain adapts quickly to new patterns, including alien technological interfaces." "Valuable specimen," Talcor murmured, his voice growing stronger as the treatment took effect. "You would fetch high price in Raxar laboratories." Arya gave him a sharp look. "I'm a person, not a specimen, and right now, I'm the person keeping you alive." A sound rumbled from deep in Talcor's chest, definitely laughter this time. "You are interesting for prey, and you're surprisingly talkative for a ruthless killer," she countered, adjusting the medication flow. "The toxin is being neutralized, but you'll need time to recover. Your neural pathways have been damaged." Talcor's clawed hand suddenly shot out, grasping her wrist again. This time, his grip was stronger, painful. "You are my prisoner now." Arya didn't struggle against his hold. "I'm your doctor, and you're still my patient, regardless of who's holding whom prisoner." Their standoff was interrupted by a violent tremor that shook the entire tunnel network. Dust and small fragments of rock showered down from above. The orbital strike, Arya realized with horror. They've begun the bombardment. Another tremor, more violent than the first, rocked the chamber. Equipment crashed to the floor, and the bioluminescent lights flickered ominously. "Your people, efficient killers," Talcor observed, his grip on her wrist loosening as he struggled to sit up. "This section will not hold." As if to confirm his words, a section of the ceiling collapsed 20 meters down the corridor, blocking their exit route. The vibration of continued bombardment traveled through the rock around them. "We need to find another way out," Arya said, gathering what portable medical supplies she could salvage. "Can you move?" Talcor rose unsteadily, his massive frame still weakened from the toxin but functional. "Follow." They navigated deeper into the tunnel network, away from the bombardment zone. Talcor moved with growing confidence as the antitoxin continued to work through his system, though Arya noted he was still far from his full strength. For her part, she remained alert, memorizing their route in case she needed to find her way back alone. "Your commander wishes me dead, quite badly," Talcor remarked as they paused at a junction. "To risk friendly casualties. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus follows orders," Arya replied tersely. "As do I, usually. Yet here you are," he observed, selecting a tunnel that sloped gently upward, defying orders to save enemy. Arya had been asking herself the same question since the moment she'd made her decision. "I took an oath to preserve life. All life. Oaths." Talcor's mandibles clicked in what she interpreted as dismissal. "Chains for the weak," says the warrior bound by military hierarchy and honor codes, she retorted. "We all serve something, Admiral." before he could respond. Another violent tremor shook the tunnel. This one was different, closer, more focused. Not orbital bombardment. They're using bunker penetrators, Arya realized aloud. They're trying to collapse the tunnel network. Talcor's reaction was immediate. He grabbed her arm, pulling her into a sprint down the tunnel. This way! They ran through the shaking passage, dodging falling debris. Arya's medical training assessed their situation automatically. Increased heart rate, adrenaline response, oxygen efficiency declining in the dust-filled air. Talcor was pushing himself beyond what his recovering body should endure. The tunnel ahead forked, and Talcor hesitated. A moment too long. A massive section of ceiling came down between them and both potential escape routes. Talcor shoved Arya backward, out of the path of the largest falling rocks, but couldn't entirely escape himself. A boulder caught him across the shoulders, driving him to the ground. Arya scrambled to his side, medical scanner already in hand. Don't move, you might have spinal damage. Talcor snarled in pain and frustration. Assess the situation, not me. She looked up, scanning their surroundings. They were trapped in a section of tunnel, perhaps 20 meters long, with collapse sites at both ends. The air quality was deteriorating rapidly, and her scanner detected stress fractures spreading through the remaining ceiling. This entire section is going to come down, she said grimly. Minutes, maybe less. Talcor attempted to rise, dislodging the rock, pinning him down through sheer strength. Dark ichor seeped from fresh wounds across his armored hide. There is a maintenance shaft, he grunted, pointing to a nearly invisible seam in the wall. Emergency. Exit. Arya examined the section he indicated, finding a concealed panel similar to the tunnel entrance. Will it recognize my handprint? No. Talcor struggled to his feet, swaying dangerously. Only command level. He staggered to the wall, pressing his palm against the hidden panel. Nothing happened. Systems damaged, he growled, striking the panel with his fist. Still nothing. Another tremor shook the tunnel, more debris raining down. A support beam cracked ominously above them. The main power conduit must be severed, Arya said, thinking aloud. She examined the panel more closely with her scanner. There's a backup system, but it's not activating. Talcor leaned heavily against the wall, his breathing labored. The toxin had weakened him, and now the physical trauma was taking its toll. Manual. Override. Behind panel. Arya pried at the edges of the panel, her fingers searching for a grip. Finally, it came loose, revealing a complex crystal matrix beneath, similar to the medical equipment she'd interfaced with earlier. I need to reroute the emergency power, she said, studying the configuration. If I can access it the same way. She pressed her palm against the largest crystal in the matrix. Immediately, pain lanced through her head as the damaged system attempted to interface. Unlike the medical equipment, this system was not designed for non-Raxar use. It felt like needles driving into her brain, searching for compatible neural pathways. Arya gritted her teeth, forcing her enhanced neuroplasticity to adapt. Gradually, the pain subsided, replaced by fragmented understanding. The system was badly damaged, but she could sense the emergency protocols waiting to be activated. I think I can do this, she gasped, keeping her hand in place despite the discomfort. But I need a security override. Talcor moved behind her, reaching around to place his own hand atop hers on the crystal. The contact sent a shock through her system, not painful this time, but intensely intimate. For a moment, their minds touched through the crystal matrix, and Arya caught glimpses of Talcor's consciousness, his tactical brilliance, his unwavering dedication to his species, his growing curiosity about the human who had saved him. The panel suddenly illuminated. Crystal components realigning themselves. The seam in the wall widened, revealing a narrow maintenance shaft leading upward. It worked, Arya exclaimed, withdrawing her hand from the now functioning panel. The mental connection broke immediately, leaving a strange emptiness in its wake. "Quickly," Talcor urged, gesturing toward the shaft. "You first." Arya hesitated. "Can you climb in your condition?" His mandibles clicked in irritation. "Do not concern yourself. Go." The shaft was tight even for her human frame. For Talcor's bulk, it would be extremely challenging. But with the tunnel continuing to deteriorate around them, they had no choice. Arya entered the shaft, using the embedded handholds to pull herself upward. The climb was steep, designed for Raxar's strength and reach. She could hear Talcor below her, his breathing harsh with exertion. "How much further?" she called down after several minutes of climbing. "Surface. Near," came the labored reply. "Keep moving." The shaft terminated in another panel, this one responding immediately to her touch after her interface with the system below. It slid open, allowing harsh desert sunlight to pour in. Arya pulled herself out onto the surface, blinking against the sudden brightness. They had emerged on a rocky outcropping overlooking a vast expanse of desert. In the distance, she could see smoke rising from the battlefield they had left behind. The orbital bombardment had ceased, but ground forces were still engaged in scattered fighting. Arya turned back to the shaft entrance, extending her hand to help Talcor. The Raxar commander emerged with difficulty, his powerful body now moving with obvious pain. Fresh ichor stained his scaled skin where the climbing had reopened his wounds. "You need treatment," she said, medical training overriding all other concerns as she assessed his condition. Talcor ignored her, scanning the horizon with predatory focus. "Your forces, advancing. My troops, regrouping there." He pointed to a distant ridge where Raxar energy weapons flashed in the sunlight. "We're in the middle of an active battlefield," Arya realized. "Both sides will fire on us if they spot us." "Then we should," Talcor began, but was cut off by a violent fit of coughing. Dark fluid spattered from his mouth, a concerning symptom that Arya's scanner confirmed was internal bleeding. "You're not going anywhere," she said firmly, guiding him to sit against a rock formation that provided some cover. "The toxin damaged your organs more than I initially thought, and the physical exertion has made it worse." Talcor's eyes fixed on her, vertical pupils contracting in the bright light. "You should run. Save yourself." "That's not how this works," Arya replied, opening her medical kit. She had salvaged enough supplies from the Raxar medical chamber to stabilize him again, though a full recovery would require more sophisticated treatment. "I didn't drag you this far just to leave you to die." As she administered emergency treatment, a new sound cut through the distant battle noise, the distinctive whine of human alliance dropships approaching their position. Someone had detected them. "They're coming for us," Arya said, working faster. "Your people too, probably." Talcor's clawed hand closed around her wrist, stopping her movements. "Why do you persist? I am your enemy. My death advantages your kind." Arya met his alien gaze directly. "Because this isn't about strategic advantage. It's about who we choose to be. Even in war, I choose to be a healer." For a long moment, Talcor studied her, his expression unreadable to human eyes. Then, slowly, he released her wrist. "Finish your work," he said quietly. "Then we will face our judgment." Arya completed the treatment as best she could with limited supplies. Talcor's condition stabilized, though he remained weakened. By the time she closed her medical kit, the dropships were visible on the horizon, and Raxar energy signatures were appearing on her scanner as they approached from the opposite direction. "They'll be here in minutes," she said, standing to survey their surroundings. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. They were exposed on the rocky outcropping, visible to both approaching forces. Your commander will execute you, Talcor observed, struggling to his feet beside her. For aiding enemy. Probably, Arya agreed grimly. And yours? Talcor's mandibles clicked in what might have been a grim smile. Much the same, perhaps with more pain. They stood side by side as the forces closed in. Human dropships from the north. Raxar ground troops from the south, through her tactical visor. Arya could already identify Lieutenant Colonel Marcus leading the human contingent, his expression thunderous even at a distance. "Lieutenant Novak," Marcus's voice boomed through her comms, "stand down and step away from the enemy combatant immediately." From the south, a Raxar voice transmitted on an open frequency, translated automatically by Arya's comms. "Admiral Talcor, you are ordered to eliminate the human captive and return to Raxar lines." Talcor and Arya exchanged a glance, a moment of understanding passing between them. Neither of them could comply with their orders without betraying what had transpired between them. "What now, Doctor?" Talcor asked quietly. Arya took a deep breath, making her decision. "Now we show them another way." The human forces landed first, disgorging heavily armed soldiers who took up positions with weapons trained on Talcor. Marcus approached, flanked by security personnel, his pulse rifle aimed at the Raxar commander's head. "Lieutenant, I'm placing you under arrest for treason and dereliction of duty," he announced coldly. "Step aside so we can neutralize this target." From the south, Raxar troops advanced in formation, their crystalline armor glinting in the harsh sunlight. At their head strode a smaller Raxar that Arya recognized from intelligence briefings as Major Saris Vor, the biological weapons specialist who had poisoned Talcor. "The human is mine," Talcor called out in the guttural Raxar language, his translator broadcasting in English for the human forces to hear. "She is my prisoner and under my protection." Saris Vor's mandibles clicked rapidly, surprise, then derision. "You protect human prey? The toxin has affected your mind, Admiral." "Stand down, Lieutenant," Marcus ordered Arya again, his finger tightening on the trigger of his weapon. "That's a direct order." Arya looked between them, human and Raxar, both poised to kill, both unable to see beyond their entrenched hatred. Then she did the only thing she could think of. She stepped directly in front of Talcor, shielding his body with her own. "If you want him, you'll have to go through me," she announced, her voice carrying across the tense battlefield. "And I remind both sides that targeting medical personnel is a war crime under the Galactic Conventions." "He is an enemy combatant responsible for thousands of deaths," Marcus shouted, his weapon still raised. "Move aside." "He is a wounded patient under my care," Arya countered, "and I will not abandon him." Behind her, she felt Talcor shift, rather than using her as a shield, as both sides might have expected. He moved to stand beside her. His massive frame, though weakened, was still imposing as he faced both approaching forces. "This human preserved my life," he announced, his translated voice carrying to all present. "When she could have claimed glory by letting me die, when her commander..." Saris. Vor advanced, his own weapon raised. "Then you are weak and unfit to command. The Council will hear of this. The Council will hear of your attempted assassination." Talcor replied, his mandibles clicking in challenge. "Your toxin signature is distinctive. Vor." A ripple of reaction passed through the Raxar ranks at this accusation. Internal assassination was a grave dishonor in their culture, worse even than battlefield defeat. Marcus, meanwhile, had not lowered his weapon. "Lieutenant Novak, for the last time, stand down." "Sir, with respect, I cannot," Arya replied steadily. "My oath as a medical officer supersedes my military duty." If we execute wounded enemies who are no longer a threat, we become no better than what we claim to fight against. The standoff stretched, seconds expanding into an eternity of tension. Human soldiers with fingers on triggers, Raxar warriors with energy weapons humming with deadly potential. In the middle, a human lieutenant and a Raxar admiral, healer and destroyer, standing together against their own kind. Then, incredibly, Talcor began to collapse. The strain of standing, of confronting both forces, had depleted his remaining strength. Without hesitation, Arya turned to catch him, her arms wrapping around his massive frame as he sank to his knees. Her medical instincts took over, supporting him, checking his vital signs even as she remained exposed to weapons from both sides. What happened next would later be recounted in official reports, personal journals, and eventually, historical archives across two civilizations. As Lieutenant Arya Novak wrapped her arms around the dying apex predator of the Raxar forces, a profound silence fell over the battlefield. The image, small human embracing massive alien, healer cradling warrior, struck something primal in all who witnessed it. Major Saris Vor was the first to lower his weapon, mandibles clicking in a pattern that the translators interpreted as reluctant respect. One by one, the Raxar warriors followed suit, crystal weapons powering down. On the human side, it was Hana, Arya's assistant nurse, who stepped forward. "Sir," she said to Marcus, her young voice steady, "we are medical personnel. Our duty is to all wounded, regardless of species." Marcus's expression was rigid with fury and incomprehension, but as more of his soldiers hesitantly lowered their weapons, the tactical reality became clear. If he gave the order to fire, he would be initiating a new battle that neither side seemed willing to fight. "Stand down," he finally ordered, lowering his own rifle. "Secure a perimeter. No one fires unless fired upon." Arya, still supporting Talcor, felt rather than saw the change in the atmosphere. The palpable bloodlust that had charged the air moments before was receding, replaced by confusion, curiosity, and perhaps, just perhaps, the faintest glimmer of something like respect. "I need medical supplies," she called out to both sides. "He's stabilized, but needs proper treatment." It was Hana who responded first, approaching cautiously with her medical kit. Other human medics followed, their training overcoming their fear of the Raxar. From the alien side, a Raxar carrying crystalline medical equipment advanced with similar caution. As the impromptu medical team gathered around Talcor, Marcus approached Arya, his voice low and tight with controlled anger. "You realize you'll face court-martial for this?" Arya nodded, continuing her work without looking up. "I know, sir, but I couldn't do otherwise." "Was it worth it?" he demanded. "Throwing away your career, possibly your freedom, for an enemy who would have killed you without hesitation?" Arya finally looked up, meeting his gaze directly. "With respect, sir, he didn't kill me when he had the chance, and neither did I kill him." "Maybe that's worth something." Marcus had no immediate reply. He stepped back, watching as human and Raxar medical personnel worked together awkwardly but effectively to stabilize the alien commander. Saris Vor approached next, his smaller frame still imposing to human eyes. "You have interesting techniques," he observed, watching Arya work. "Our medical knowledge does not interface with yours." "It can," Arya replied without pausing in her tasks, "if we choose to share rather than destroy." The Raxar biological weapons specialist studied her for a long moment. "The Admiral speaks truth about my toxin?" "Yes," Arya confirmed, meeting his alien gaze. "Your biological signature is embedded in its structure, quite sophisticated, actually." Vor's mandibles clicked rapidly in what might have been discomfort. "You detected and neutralized it. Few could accomplish this." "I had help," Arya nodded toward Talcor. His knowledge, combined with mine. This exchange was interrupted by the arrival of a senior human officer from the dropship, General Rivera, the regional commander. Her presence on the battlefield was unprecedented, a testament to the extraordinary situation unfolding. "Report, Lieutenant Colonel," she ordered Marcus. As Marcus explained the situation, Arya continued working alongside the mixed medical team. Talcor had regained consciousness and was watching the proceedings with keen intelligence despite his weakened state. "Your general will order my execution," he murmured to Arya, his translator keeping their conversation private. "I don't think so," Arya replied, adjusting his medication. "She's more pragmatic than that." Indeed, after conferring with Marcus, General Rivera approached the medical team. Her expression was unreadable as she observed the Raxar commander. "Admiral Talcor," she addressed him directly, "your reputation precedes you." Talcor's mandibles clicked once. "As does yours, General Rivera." "I've received communication from your high command," Rivera continued. "They seem quite interested in your survival." This news clearly surprised Talcor. "The Council contacted you directly?" "Apparently. Major Vor's assassination attempt was not as unauthorized as he might have led you to believe." Rivera's tone was matter-of-fact. "Certain factions within your leadership structure are, shall we say, concerned about the direction of this conflict." Arya continued her work, listening intently. The political implications were enormous. If factions within the Raxar leadership were questioning the war, this moment, this strange, unexpected moment of cooperation around a wounded enemy, might be more significant than she had imagined. "A temporary cessation of hostilities has been proposed," Rivera continued, "to allow for the recovery and exchange of wounded from both sides, starting with you, Admiral." Talcor's vertical pupils contracted sharply. "A truce?" "A medical ceasefire," Rivera corrected. "Limited in scope and duration, 48 hours, confined to this region of Krethos." The Raxar commander was silent for a long moment, his alien face unreadable to most humans present, but Arya, who had spent hours treating him, recognized the subtle indicators of intense calculation. "The alternative," Rivera added, "is that we resume combat operations immediately. With you in your current condition, I estimate your forces would be at a significant disadvantage." It was a diplomatic way of stating the obvious. The Raxar's highest-ranking field commander was incapacitated, and his second-in-command had tried to assassinate him. Their chain of command was compromised. "I accept the medical ceasefire," Talcor finally declared. 48 hours. General Rivera nodded once, sharply. "I'll inform your council." She turned to Marcus. "Lieutenant Colonel, establish a neutral medical zone around this position. 3-kilometer radius. No weapons beyond the perimeter." "Yes, General," Marcus replied, though his expression suggested he had significant reservations. As the two commanders moved away to communicate with their respective forces, Arya completed her treatment of Talcor. His condition was stable now, his impressive Raxar physiology already beginning the healing process. "You have accomplished something unexpected, Doctor," he said quietly. "I just did my job," Arya replied, packing away her medical supplies. "No," Talcor's clawed hand caught her arm gently. "You did more. You showed another path, when both sides saw only death." Arya looked around at the scene unfolding around them, human and Raxar soldiers establishing a perimeter, medical personnel preparing to receive wounded from both sides, commanders communicating across species lines without immediate hostility. "It won't last," she said realistically. 48 hours doesn't erase years of war. "A journey of 1,000 leagues begins with single step," Talcor quoted. Surprising her, "Human wisdom, I studied your philosophers." Arya smiled slightly. You're full of surprises, Admiral. As are you, Lieutenant. His mandibles clicked in what she now recognized as his version of a smile. Perhaps we will meet again, when I am not your patient. I hope it's under peaceful circumstances, Arya replied. That remains to be seen. Talcor's tone was pragmatic. But possibilities exist now that did not before. Within hours, the neutral medical zone was established. Wounded from both sides were brought in, treated by mixed teams of human and Raxar medical personnel working side by side. Awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence as they shared techniques and knowledge. Arya found herself at the center of this unprecedented cooperation, her unique neuroplasticity making her particularly adept at understanding Raxar medical technology. She moved between cases, human and alien alike, her oath to preserve life transcending the boundaries of species and conflict. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus approached her toward the end of the first day, his expression still stern but somehow less rigid than before. General Rivera wants to see you, he informed her. And for the record, Lieutenant, you're still facing disciplinary action when this ceasefire ends. I understand, sir, Arya replied, straightening her uniform as best she could after hours of continuous work. But, Marcus added reluctantly, I've recommended that the court-martial consider extenuating circumstances. Arya looked at him in surprise. Sir, Marcus gestured to the medical zone around them. This situation has strategic value. Intelligence is already gathering more information about Raxar physiology and technology in these 48 hours than we've accumulated in 5 years of conflict. He paused. Your actions were insubordinate and reckless, but the outcome has proven useful. Coming from Marcus, this was tantamount to high praise. Arya nodded, accepting the backhanded compliment for what it was. Thank you, sir. General Rivera was coordinating operations from a temporary command post at the edge of the medical zone. She dismissed her aides as Arya entered, studying the lieutenant with keen interest. Lieutenant Novak, she greeted. Your personnel file makes for interesting reading. Enhanced neuroplasticity, specialized xenomedical training, highest aptitude scores in adaptive problem-solving. She paused. Nothing in it, however, suggested a tendency toward dramatic battlefield diplomacy. Arya stood at attention. It wasn't my intention to create a diplomatic situation. General, I was following my medical oath. Intent aside, that's precisely what you've done. Rivera gestured for her to sit. The Raxar Council has requested that you personally oversee Admiral Talcor's continued treatment. Me, specifically? Arya asked, surprised. Apparently, the Admiral spoke highly of your skills. Rivera replied with a hint of dry humor. And since you've already demonstrated an ability to work with Raxar medical technology, you're uniquely qualified. Arya considered this. And after the 48 hours? That, Rivera said, leaning forward, depends partly on you. Lieutenant, this medical ceasefire could be extended if it proves productive. It could even, potentially, lead to broader diplomatic discussions. The implication was clear. What had begun as a single act of compassion might become the foundation for something far more significant. I'm not a diplomat, General, Arya pointed out. I'm a doctor. Sometimes, Lieutenant Novak, healing takes many forms. Rivera's expression was thoughtful. You've created an opening, however unintentionally. Now we need to see where it leads. As Arya left the command post, she found Hana waiting for her, the young private's expression a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Is it true, ma'am? Hana asked. You're going to keep treating the Raxar commander? Those are my orders, Arya confirmed. Hana fell into step beside her. The others are talking about what you did. Some are calling it treason, but others. She hesitated. Others are saying it's the bravest thing they've ever seen. Arya sighed. I wasn't trying to be brave, Hana. I was just doing what I believed was right. That's what bravery is, isn't it? Hana replied simply. They walked together through the medical zone, past humans and Raxar being treated side by side. In some cases, medical personnel from both species were collaborating, sharing techniques and knowledge that had previously been weaponized against each other. Talcor was being treated in a specialized area that combined human and Raxar medical technology. His recovery was progressing well, his powerful physiology responding to the combined treatment protocols. When Arya entered, he dismissed the Raxar medical attendants with a gesture. They left reluctantly, mandibles clicking in what she now recognized as concern. "Your general has informed me of your new assignment," Talcor said as she checked his vital signs. "How do you feel about that?" Arya asked, noting the significant improvement in his condition. "It is acceptable." His vertical pupils fixed on her with that predatory focus she had come to know. "You have proven trustworthy. Coming from a Raxar commander, this was extraordinary praise." Arya acknowledged it with a nod, continuing her examination. "The toxin has been fully neutralized," she reported. "And your cellular regeneration is impressive. You should be back to full strength within a few days. In time for combat to resume," Talcor observed. Arya's hands paused in their work. "Is that inevitable? What alternative do you propose, Doctor?" he asked, his tone genuinely curious rather than dismissive. "I don't know," she admitted. "I'm not a strategist or a diplomat, but I've seen something in these past 24 hours that I didn't think was possible. Humans and Raxar working together, learning from each other. A temporary anomaly," Talcor replied, though without his earlier certainty. "Our species, fundamentally opposed. Are we?" Arya challenged, "or have we just never tried to understand each other?" Talcor was silent for a long moment. "Understanding requires willingness, on both sides, like what happened in that tunnel," Arya said quietly. "When we connected through the crystal matrix, the memory hung between them, that moment of shared consciousness, brief but profound." Talcor's mandibles clicked softly. "That was unusual," he acknowledged. "Your mind, adaptable. Most humans cannot interface." "Maybe that's the problem," Arya suggested. "We haven't found the right interfaces, the right ways to connect and communicate." "An interesting theory," Talcor mused. "But one commander and one doctor cannot change the course of interspecies war." Arya smiled slightly. "Maybe not, but right now, one commander and one doctor have created a space where humans and Raxar aren't killing each other. That's a start." The second day of the ceasefire brought new developments. Word of the unprecedented cooperation on Krathos had spread through both military hierarchies. Additional medical personnel were dispatched from both sides, along with observers and, Arya noted with interest, individuals who seemed to have diplomatic rather than military backgrounds. Major Ceres Vor had been recalled to the Raxar mothership, his attempted assassination now under investigation by the Raxar Council. In his place, a female Raxar named Krelvax had arrived, smaller than Talcor, but with the distinctive cranial markings of a scientist caste. "Lieutenant Novak," Krelvax addressed her as Arya completed her morning rounds. "Your reputation grows among my people." "I'm just doing my job," Arya replied, by now accustomed to the distinctive speech patterns of translated Raxar language. "Your job saved our most valuable commander," Krelvax observed, and revealed treachery within our ranks. Her mandibles clicked in a pattern Arya hadn't seen before. "The Council wishes to understand your medical techniques." This was unexpected, a request for knowledge sharing rather than combat intelligence. "I'd be happy to demonstrate human medical protocols," Arya replied cautiously. Within appropriate security parameters, of course. Of course, Krelvax agreed. As we would share certain non-tactical medical knowledge, and in return. It was a tentative offer of scientific exchange, something that would have been unthinkable just days earlier. Arya recognized the significance of the moment. I think that would be valuable for both our species, she said carefully. I'll need to consult with my command structure. Naturally. Krelvax's mandibles clicked in what Arya was beginning to recognize as amusement. Hierarchies must be respected. When Arya brought the proposal to General Rivera, she found the commander already in discussion with a civilian representative from the Human Alliance Diplomatic Corps, a development that suggested the implications of the medical ceasefire were being taken seriously at the highest levels. A knowledge exchange? Rivera considered the idea. Limited to medical technology? That's my understanding, Arya confirmed. Though I suspect it could expand to other scientific domains if successful. The diplomat, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Helena Reyes, leaned forward with interest. This could be significant. We've never had a Raxar offer of knowledge sharing before. They've always guarded their technology zealously. They still will, Rivera cautioned. Anything they share will be carefully controlled, just as our contributions will be. Of course, Dr. Reyes agreed. But the precedent matters. If we can establish even a limited scientific exchange, it creates a channel of communication outside the battlefield. Rivera turned to Arya. Lieutenant, you've spent more time with Admiral Talcor than any human in our records. What's your assessment? Is this offer genuine or a tactical maneuver? Arya considered the question seriously. I believe it's genuine, but also strategic. The Raxar are pragmatists. They've seen the value of our medical techniques, just as we've recognized the advantages of their technology. They're calculating that a limited exchange benefits them. And does it? Rivera pressed. I think it benefits both sides. Arya replied honestly. We're already seeing improved survival rates for wounded by combining our approaches. And she hesitated, then continued. There's something else. When I interfaced with their medical system, I sensed that their understanding of neural pathways is far advanced of ours. That knowledge could have significant implications for treating human neural injuries. Dr. Reyes nodded slowly. Reciprocal advantage, the foundation of sustainable diplomacy. Authorize the exchange, Lieutenant. Rivera decided, limited to medical knowledge only, with appropriate security protocols. Dr. Reyes will provide oversight from the diplomatic perspective. Yes, General, Arya acknowledged, recognizing that her role had expanded far beyond her original medical duties. When she returned to Talcor's treatment area, she found the Raxar commander sitting up, engaged in what appeared to be a tactical briefing with several subordinates. They fell silent as she entered, crystalline data devices disappearing into armored compartments. Your recovery continues to impress, Arya observed, scanning his vital signs with professional detachment. Talcor dismissed his officers with a gesture when they had gone. He fixed Arya with his penetrating gaze. You have spoken with your commanders, he stated rather than asked, about Krelvax's proposal. Yes, Arya confirmed. We're prepared to engage in a limited medical knowledge exchange with appropriate protocols. Talcor's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Good. It begins. Something in his tone gave Arya pause. What begins, exactly? Change, he replied simply. The Council has been divided on the human conflict. Some believe total war necessary. Others see potential in cooperation. And which group do you belong to? Arya asked directly. Talcor's vertical pupils contracted slightly. I was firmly in the first group, until recently. The admission hung between them, its implications profound. If a commander of Talcor's reputation and influence was reconsidering the necessity of total war, it represented a significant shift in Raxar thinking. "What changed your mind?" Arya asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "You did," Talcor replied, confirming her suspicion. "Not with words, but with actions. When you placed yourself between me and your own kind." Arya remembered that moment, standing between Talcor and certain death, defying her commander, her training, perhaps even logic itself. It had been instinct as much as decision, the healer in her refusing to allow a patient to die, regardless of species. One person can't change the course of a war. She echoed his earlier statement. Perhaps not. Talcor agreed. But one person can change another. Who changes another until the inevitable becomes possible? It was a surprisingly philosophical perspective from a warrior renowned for his ruthlessness. Arya wondered how much of this thinking had always been present in Talcor and how much had developed through their unexpected connection. "The ceasefire ends tomorrow," she reminded him, checking the final readings on her scanner. "What happens then?" Talcor's expression became unreadable again, the commander replacing the patient. "That depends on many factors, some beyond our control, but some within it," Arya countered. "You command significant forces. Your voice carries weight in the Raxar Council, as does your general and your alliance," Talcor observed. "Yet neither of us determines policy alone." It was a realistic assessment, reminding Arya of the limitations of their influence, however symbolic their interaction had become. "Then we work with what we can control," she said pragmatically, "starting with this medical exchange." Talcor inclined his head in agreement. "Indeed, small steps on a longer path." The knowledge exchange began that afternoon, conducted in a neutral facility hastily established at the center of the medical zone. Arya found herself working alongside Krelvax and a mixed team of human and Raxar medical specialists, each sharing carefully selected techniques and technologies under the watchful eyes of security personnel from both sides. Despite the limitations and suspicions, genuine progress was made. The Raxar demonstrated crystalline healing matrices that accelerated tissue regeneration, while the humans shared advanced neural mapping techniques that complemented Raxar biological understanding. Each revelation was measured, tactical, yet the cumulative effect was a growing recognition of complementary strengths. As the second day of the ceasefire drew to a close, tension began to build throughout the zone. The deadline approached, and with it, the prospect of resumed hostilities. Wounded who could be moved were being evacuated by both sides. Preparations made for the potential collapse of this brief moment of cooperation. Arya completed her final examination of Talcor, confirming what she already knew. He had recovered sufficiently to return to duty. His Raxar physiology, combined with the hybrid treatment protocols, had accomplished in days what would have taken weeks for a human. "You are cleared for combat," she informed him, the professional assessment at odds with her personal hopes. "As are you," Talcor noted. "Your court-martial has been postponed?" "Indefinitely," Arya confirmed. General Rivera had quietly shelved the disciplinary proceedings, recognizing that punishing the architect of this unprecedented diplomatic opening would send the wrong message. "Though Lieutenant Colonel Marcus still glares at me whenever our paths cross," Talcor's mandibles clicked in what she now recognized as amusement. "Leaders must maintain appearance of discipline, even when secretly approving." "Is that a universal constant?" Arya asked, smiling slightly. "Across more species than you know," Talcor replied, rising to his full impressive height. Fully recovered, he towered over her, his armored form a reminder of the predatory nature of his species. Yet Arya felt no fear in his presence now. "I've been summoned to a command briefing," she told him, packing away her medical equipment for the final time. Presumably to discuss what happens after midnight, as have I. Talcor acknowledged. He hesitated, then extended his clawed hand in a gesture that was unmistakably human, a handshake. Until we meet again, Lieutenant Arya Novak. Arya took his hand without hesitation, feeling the strange texture of scaled skin against her own. Until then, Admiral Talcor. The command briefing was held in General Rivera's temporary headquarters, now expanded to accommodate additional personnel from Alliance High Command. Arya was surprised to find herself seated at the main table alongside senior officers and diplomatic staff, a recognition of her unique role in the unfolding situation. The Raxar Council has proposed an extension of the ceasefire, Rivera announced without preamble. Not just the medical provision, but a full combat cessation across the Krethos theater. Murmurs rippled through the assembled officers. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus's expression was particularly thunderous. For how long? Someone asked. 30 days, Rivera replied, with the possibility of further extension pending diplomatic discussions. And what do they want in return? Marcus demanded suspiciously. Access to the research conducted during the medical exchange, Dr. Reyes answered, and establishment of a neutral zone around the current medical facility, to be jointly administered for continued collaborative research. Arya listened intently, recognizing the significance of what was being proposed. This was no longer a temporary pause in hostilities, but the potential beginning of a genuine peace process. Lieutenant Novak, Rivera addressed her directly. You've had the most direct interaction with their command structure. Your assessment? All eyes turned to Arya. The junior officer suddenly thrust into the role of expert analyst. She chose her words carefully. I believe there is genuine interest in de-escalation from significant factions within the Raxar leadership. The assassination attempt against Admiral Talcor suggests internal conflict over the direction of the war. This proposal may represent an opportunity for the moderate faction to gain influence. And Talcor himself? Rivera pressed. Where does he stand? Arya recalled their final conversation, the philosophical turn it had taken. He's evolving, she said honestly. I believe he was firmly in the pro-war camp before recent events. Now, he seems to be reconsidering that position. Because you saved his life? Marcus asked skeptically. Partly, Arya acknowledged. But also because he's had direct exposure to humans in a non-combat context. That experience appears to have challenged some of his assumptions about our species. Dr. Reyes nodded thoughtfully. Contact theory in practice. Direct interaction under cooperative conditions reducing intergroup prejudice. Theoretical models aside, Rivera said pragmatically. Alliance Command is inclined to accept the proposal. With appropriate security measures, Lieutenant Colonel Marcus will coordinate the military aspects of the ceasefire. Dr. Reyes will handle the diplomatic framework. She turned to Arya. And Lieutenant Novak, you will continue to serve as our primary liaison with Admiral Talcor, given the rapport you've established. It was an extraordinary assignment for an officer of her rank, a recognition of the unique connection she had formed with the Raxar commander. Yes, General, Arya acknowledged, aware of the responsibility being placed on her shoulders. As the briefing concluded and officers dispersed to implement the ceasefire extension, Marcus approached Arya with a grudging expression. It seems your insubordination has been retroactively reclassified as initiative, he observed dryly. Congratulations. Thank you, sir, Arya replied, recognizing the backhanded acknowledgement for what it was. Just remember, Marcus added, his expression serious. Talcor is still a Raxar. They think differently than we do. What looks like cooperation could be tactical positioning. Don't let your dial connection cloud your judgment. I understand the risks, sir, Arya assured him. I'll remain objective. Marcus nodded once, sharply. See that you do, because a lot more than one life is riding on this now. The ceasefire extension was announced at midnight, the moment when hostilities should have resumed. Instead, a formal agreement was transmitted between command structures, and the tentative peace continued. Troops on both sides received the news with mixtures of relief, suspicion, and cautious optimism. Over the following days, the medical exchange expanded into a broader scientific collaboration. Still carefully limited to non-weapons technology, but growing in scope and ambition, Arya found herself at the center of this unprecedented cooperation, her neural plasticity making her particularly valuable in interfacing with Raxar systems and translating concepts between species. Talcor, meanwhile, divided his time between the collaborative zone and his own forces, maintaining his command responsibilities while participating in the diplomatic process. Arya met with him regularly, their conversations evolving from purely medical matters to broader discussions of their respective cultures and the possibility of coexistence. Your people value individual choice above collective good. Talcor observed during one such conversation, 3 weeks into the extended ceasefire. They were walking the perimeter of the neutral zone, an activity that had become something of a ritual for them. Not always, Arya countered. In crisis situations, we can be remarkably unified, but yes, individual liberty is a cornerstone of human values. While Raxar prioritize collective strength, Talcor acknowledged the good of many over the one. Are those values truly incompatible? Arya asked. Or just different approaches to the same fundamental goal, the survival and prosperity of a species? Talcor considered this, his predatory gaze scanning the horizon. Perhaps complementary, in some contexts, opposing, in others, like our medical techniques, Arya suggested. Different approaches, but more effective when combined. An apt analogy, Talcor conceded, though scaling from medicine to civilization presents challenges. Their philosophical discussion was interrupted by the approach of a human messenger, one of Rivera's aides. Lieutenant Novak, the young officer addressed her. General Rivera requests your presence immediately. The Raxar Council has made contact directly. Arya exchanged a glance with Talcor, whose mandibles clicked in surprise. Direct communication from the Raxar Council to human leadership was unprecedented. I must attend as well, Talcor stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. If my council speaks, I should be present. The aide hesitated, then nodded. The general anticipated your request. Admiral, you're both expected. They made their way quickly to the command center, which had grown substantially over the past weeks as the ceasefire evolved into a diplomatic mission. Inside, General Rivera and Dr. Reyes were already engaged in communication with a crystalline projection device, Raxar holographic technology that displayed 3 members of the Raxar High Council. Admiral Talcor, the Central Council member acknowledged as they entered. Lieutenant Novak, your presence is appropriate. This concerns you both. Arya stood at attention, aware of the historical significance of the moment. Direct council communication meant decisions of the highest importance were being conveyed. The council has reviewed all reports from Kratos, the counselor continued, including detailed accounts of the interaction between Admiral Talcor and Lieutenant Novak. Talcor stepped forward, his posture formal. The reports are accurate. Counselor, the human medical officer preserved my life at risk to her own, defying her command structure. So we understand. The counselor's mandibles clicked in what Arya had come to recognize as thoughtful consideration. This action, and subsequent developments, have prompted reevaluation of certain strategic assumptions. General Rivera spoke carefully. The Alliance has similarly found value in the cooperative framework established here on Kratos. Therefore, the counselor continued, the Council proposes expansion of the ceasefire to all theaters of conflict between our species, for a period of 1 standard solar year. The announcement sent a ripple of reaction through the human officers present. A year-long cessation of hostilities throughout human and Raxar space would be unprecedented, not just a tactical pause, but a fundamental shift in interspecies relations. During this period, the counselor added, diplomatic channels will be established for formal peace negotiations. Talcor's reaction was controlled but visible to Arya, who had learned to read his alien expressions. Surprise, followed by calculation, and finally something like cautious approval. The Alliance welcomes this proposal, Rivera responded formally. We will transmit it to our leadership immediately, with our strong recommendation for acceptance. The counselor's attention shifted to Arya. Lieutenant Novak, the council acknowledges your role in this development. You will be recorded in Raxar archives. A healer who embraced enemy, an honorific of significant distinction. Arya felt Talcor's gaze upon her, sensing his approval of this unexpected recognition. I am honored, Counselor, she replied simply. I only did what I believed was right. Sometimes, the counselor's mandibles clicked in what might have been wisdom. What is right changes course of history. The crystalline projection flickered. We will speak again when Alliance response is received. As the communication ended, the command center erupted in controlled excitement. Officers conferred in hushed tones, messages were prepared for transmission to Alliance headquarters, and strategic implications were assessed. Amidst the activity, Arya found herself standing beside Talcor. Both of them momentarily overlooked in the larger diplomatic developments they had inadvertently triggered. Healer who embraced enemy, Talcor translated more fully, a title of great respect in our culture. Few non-Raxar have ever received such recognition. I didn't do it for recognition, Arya replied quietly. I know, Talcor acknowledged. That is why it was given. He paused, mandibles clicking softly. When you wrapped your arms around dying Predator, you could not know what would follow. No, Arya agreed, remembering that moment on the battlefield, the instinctive action that had silenced weapons on both sides. I just couldn't let you die. One action, Talcor mused. One moment of compassion. Now, perhaps, peace between worlds. General Rivera approached them, her expression a mixture of satisfaction and cautious optimism. It seems you two have started something significant, she observed. The diplomatic corps is already calling it the Krethos Protocol, using medical collaboration as a foundation for broader peaceful engagement. What happens next? Arya asked, still processing the enormity of the developments. Formal diplomatic teams will arrive within days, Rivera explained. The ceasefire will expand gradually to other conflict zones, and you, Lieutenant, will likely find yourself with an expanded role in the process, given your unique connection with Admiral Talcor. Talcor's mandibles clicked in what Arya now knew was approval. The lieutenant has proven herself, skilled at bridging differences. Indeed, Rivera agreed. Which is why I'm authorizing a joint research initiative under your co-leadership, human and Raxar medical techniques, formally combined and studied. If the medical collaboration can serve as a model for broader cooperation, we need to understand exactly what makes it work. It was an extraordinary assignment, a recognition of both the scientific and diplomatic significance of what had begun as a battlefield medical intervention. I would be honored, General. Arya accepted. She glanced at Talcor. Assuming the Admiral is willing to continue working with a mere human doctor, Talcor's vertical pupils contracted in what she now recognized as amusement. I believe I can tolerate the association. His mandibles clicked softly. After all, she did save my life. In the months that followed, the ceasefire held and expanded. The joint research initiative flourished, producing medical breakthroughs that benefited both species. Diplomatic relations progressed cautiously but steadily, moving from simple non-aggression to tentative cultural exchange. Arya's role evolved as well. Her unique ability to interface with Raxar technology and her established rapport with Talcor made her invaluable to the diplomatic process. She was promoted to commander, her medical expertise now complemented by diplomatic responsibilities. Talcor, meanwhile, became a leading voice for cooperation within the Raxar hierarchy, his military prestige lending weight to arguments for peaceful engagement. The assassination attempt against him had exposed factional conflicts within Raxar leadership, ultimately strengthening the position of those who favored diplomacy over conquest. 1 year after that fateful moment on the battlefield, Arya stood alongside Talcor at the formal signing of the Krathos Accords, a comprehensive peace treaty between the Human Alliance and the Raxar Dominion. What had begun as a desperate attempt to save a single life had culminated in salvation for countless others across 2 civilizations. "Did you imagine this?" Talcor asked quietly as they watched the ceremonial proceedings. "When you defied orders to treat enemy commander?" Arya shook her head. "I was just trying to do the right thing in that moment, to honor my oath as a healer." Sometimes, Talcor's mandibles clicked in what she now knew was his version of a smile. The right thing, in one moment, changes all moments that follow. They stood together, human and Raxar, former enemies, now architects of peace, watching as their respective leaders formalized what they had begun, a future where arms were wrapped in embrace rather than raised in conflict, where ancient enemies discovered they could be something unexpected, allies. And perhaps, Arya thought as she glanced at the towering Raxar commander beside her, even friends.